Ahoo. That's right. Ahoo. Woo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star. Baby, ready for you. Oh, if I got a beautiful Q&A, I am rubbing my hands together because it's going to be a good time. And why don't we get right into that good time, baby? Because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on these Q&As. You know, I know a lot of listeners, a lot of Patreon listeners, they really, they don't mind the length. But I try to keep them. I mean, I put out so much content. I have a lot of other great content coming out this week. I don't want to overload you so much. So if something takes a little less time, hey, great. I guess I'll start off. I've done this a few times in the past where, I would tell some secret about the production or something about Sovereign Tech. So we'll start it off with a little Sovereign Tech secrets. Some people might know what that style that I just did was from, or, that reference, perhaps reference in style. But anyway, yeah. Well, and I'll just open it with, somebody actually asked me the question, in an email that, is the intro that I've been using for Sovereign Tech from episode 175 to episode, well, I'll end up using it till about episode 200. Is that from, the beginning where the guy opens up with, we raise our instruments of anarchy, with all that stuff, right? Like, is that an original work that I did, or did I get that from a movie, or what? Well, I'll tell you here where it came from. So half of it, of course, is mixed in, with the very rebellious sounding, I just made that with my own voice. But anyway, with that sound, when that comes in, that's where, some, other music, and where Stephanie comes in, and I modified her voice significantly to give it a lot of scratch and, not reverb, but, well, it's terrible that what that's called is escaping me, but to give her sound, kind of that edginess, that roughness to it. Not that, I mean, how can you make, her sound, her voice always just sounds amazing, and, you can never make it sound bad by any means, but not that it was just meant for the intensity and to fit with what else is being said. So anyway, the parts of Stephanie obviously are original. And there's like 3 different pieces of music being used, all kind of interwoven to make that whole thing, come together. So as far as like what the guy is talking, that is from, and I'm going to let a little secret in here. That's actually from a wrestling pay-per-view from a few months back, that I cut that out of. So, which, not a kind of an open secret. I mean, admittedly, like I get a lot of my, well, for lack of a better word, style, all kinds of things. Admittedly, I take from my years, nay, decades, and I'm not anymore, but, decades of being a wrestling fan and knowing the business and all of this. I mean, there's so much like to really glean from, I mean, a lot of people ask these questions, like, where does this come from? Where do you get the intensity? How do you figure this out? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I take so much from that because it's just great showmanship. Negate the fact that there are 2 guys pretending to be fighting each other, which no insult there, because I think they're the greatest athletes in the world. To this day, I think that, because it's one thing to be able to do, an incredible athletic feat. It is a whole other one to do an incredible athletic feat, but make it fake, to where it doesn't hurt somebody else or whatever, or you make it look good, for it to be. I mean, that is such an upper level, that is such a higher level of athleticism that no Olympic gold medalist, in my opinion, touches. Or medalist, or, Olympiad, whatever. It doesn't even have to be a medalist. So, I give them a lot of credit, but I mean, it's classical, I don't want to say ancient, but, it's showmanship that has developed since really the very beginning of popular media, meaning since radio, honestly. And yeah, wrestling matches used to get called on radio. And I mean, and all the kind of sounds and tricks there too, to make something entertaining and worth listening to, were implemented for that. And for TV, I mean, and for everything, like wrestling it's kind of like porn, where everybody always talks about how porn is on the bleeding edge of technology. Now, I mean, that's kind of a half truth, but wrestling is definitely, they're not on, like, they really are always on the bleeding edge of whatever's happening. Before any other network really got involved in like podcasting and things like this, before any other medium did, wrestling really jumped on that. I mean, you can learn so much about great business and about the world in many ways. I mean, about like how, it can look like two people are villains when they're on stage, but really behind, closed doors or back in the locker room, as it were, they're actually buddy-buddy, which is very representative of the political system today. There's so much you can learn from the wrestling industry. I'm not saying become a wrestling fan. I'm not saying, anything of the sort, but like watching like classic wrestling documentaries. Oh, I think you can learn so much about style. You can learn so much about substance, about great business practices, what to do, what not to do. I mean, there's just a billion things that you can learn from that. So I went off on a bit of a side tangent there, but my point being is that, that where I got that from, it's not an original work. Most of my intros are 100% original. In this case, I just loved what was getting said. I thought the guy's voice was so intense. It had a great intensity to it, that I was like, okay, no, I got to use this. I'll mix it up, and I want to make sure it says things like peaceful coexistence and all that, because when it says, raise your instruments of anarchy, and obviously it being a wrestling thing, you instantly think violence, and I don't want that message to get across. So, I make sure Stephanie says peaceful coexistence, which in my opinion is one of the great goals of life. So that's kind of the little story behind that intro. Now, come episode 200, there will be new intros. There'll be new interstitials, as they're called in the biz. So get ready for those, because that time is coming up really, really fast. And something I'll let Patreon listeners know exclusively. I am going to be doing a 199A and a 199B. So as I've touted, there'd be a Halloween episode. It won't exactly come out at Halloween. The party will get started, believe me. Okay. In time, but it's going to be a 199A and a 199B, just because there is a lot of content that I really want to get out there. And I don't want to just do like 2 episodes a week or something. I don't want to fuck with people's heads in that way. So I'm going to do a 99A and a 99B, which when the original, kind of fictional episode, because like I said, 199 is going to be, I said it'd be a surprise. Well, it's going to be another fiction episode. The original fictional episode that I did of Sovereign Tech was split the same way, where it was episode 99A and then it was episode 99B. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And, I love doing these fiction episodes. There's something that I could do more as we get more Patreon subscribers. Perhaps I could do these more often. People love them. People go nuts when I did Soviet Tech last Halloween, when I did the 2099 episode. I mean, people were just ecstatic about it. So anyway, I have been talking about things that aren't very tech, frankly, up until now. We're almost about 10 minutes in. So why don't we break into the tech? Well, actually, this is going to be more of a science story. It's going to meld in with a lot of tech, because this is a big, big subject. But I really, really want to dig into this. It was a great story that got sent in to me through the various channels available. I'm sure some people would love to have this done on the Prime episodes of Sovereign Tech, but we've got other things to get to in those episodes coming up. So I won't be able to get to it then. But, ooh, boy, is this something else. So I'm actually reading from the Express, and that's a news site out of the UK, perhaps somewhat questionable, but whatever, it's there. Brian Cox, shock claim, we haven't met aliens because they're dead, and humans are next. Ooh, what's this have to say? Let's read on here. The star of, and I know I usually don't read stories on the Q&A episodes, but we're going to do it this time. Just I want to make sure, what I'm exactly responding to, et cetera, I want to hear. The star of TV's Wonders of the Universe believes eventually every civilization kills themselves off, which is why no beings have yet to make a dominant impact on the universe. Professor Cox was basing his argument around the Fermi paradox, which questions why humans are yet to make contact with aliens. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi, the creator of the world's first nuclear reactor, came up with a paradox which says, due to the age and size of the universe, there is bound to be a civilization much more advanced than ours, but why haven't they contacted us? The solution, many scientists argue, is once a civilization reaches a certain size, it eventually kills itself off, either through war with advanced weapons or natural disaster. And I'll skip ahead here, but just to say quickly, stallion breaking in. This is what's called the Great Filter. Okay, and this is a very popular theory as to why we don't make contact, or why aliens haven't contacted us, or why we haven't made contact with them. Is the Great Filter means is that there's like just a certain point. There's these different types, right? That that Michio Kaku talks about. Certain types of civilizations where, you're like a solar system class civilization, or you're just a planetary class civilization. Like that's type 1, a type 2, type 3 civilization. And nobody's really gotten past perhaps like type 2 because something disastrous happens to them. And that's called the Great Filter. Now, before anybody says it, and of course this is one-way communication, but before anybody says it, I know that there's an answer to perhaps what's happened with the Great Filter. And I will bring that one up as we go along here. But reading on, Mr. Cox elaborated on his theory, claiming that it is the reason why we have not seen any strong evidence for extraterrestrials. He told the Sunday Times, quote, "One solution to the Fermi paradox is that it is not possible to run a world that has the power to destroy itself, and that needs global collaborative solutions to prevent that. Quote, it may be that the growth of science and engineering inevitably outstrips the development of political expertise, leading to disaster," end quote. The former keyboard player for the 90s band Dream, I guess, whatever, it must be some British thing. No offense to the British here. Then warned, quote, "We could be approaching that position," end quote. However, other scientists disagree with the Fermi paradox and believe that Earth was the first planet in the entire universe to host complex life, according to a recent study. The universe has been around for roughly 13.8 billion years, and modern-day humans have existed for 200,000 years, just 0.00145% of all time. While this may lead some to the conclusion we were late to the party, a group of esteemed researchers claim we could actually be well ahead of the curve, and that advanced civilizations may not emerge for another trillion years. Avi Loeb of the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and lead author said, quote, "If you ask, when is life most likely to emerge, end quote, you might naively say now. But we find that the chance of life grows much higher in the distant future," end quote. The research says that any form of life became possible around 30 million years after the Big Bang, and scientists predict existence will continue to thrive for another 10 trillion years until all the stars in the universe have extinguished. Loeb and the team calculated when life is likely to evolve between those two markers and found that the lifespan and size of stars is the most significant factor. Anything bigger than our sun would be too hot to support life, and anything younger would be too small. So it kind of ends off on a bad note, doesn't it? Well, in 10 trillion years, this is all over, baby. Now, there's so many things I want to say about this. Okay, like there's so much science that is getting accepted in this little narrative being expressed by the Express about alien life. But why did somebody send this to me? Well, I can imagine why, because I am notorious on Sovereign Tech for when this question, the alien question comes up, and when science questions come up in general. I am notorious for making the claim that, look, I don't think aliens have ever been to Earth. I don't think aliens are ever going to come to Earth. And what's more, I think that sapient life, not animal life, but sapient life, as in life that acts outside of its instincts like humans do, and perhaps dolphins or maybe even elephants. Okay, that sapient life is exceptionally rare considering the size of the universe, or what we know of, the makeup of the universe. And I mean as in like maybe a few thousand species. That's kind of a guess. Now, where do I get that number from? Perhaps like 18,000. Well, that's another story for another time, and it's one that I told on Sovereign Tech years ago. But Now, a couple things. All right. First off is that there is this new theory going around that was described by Avi Loeb in that, or Avi Loeb in that article, which is that the reason we're not getting, because there's the Fermi paradox, right? So what you have is you have the Drake equation, which is, this mathematical equation that effectively says there are so many planets out there. There are so many stars, so many galaxies, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the amount of galaxies have increased significantly that we've discovered just in the past year. There's so much, there's so much out there. There's so much opportunity. Mathematically, statistically, there must be so much opportunity for life to come to fruition that there must be fucking sapient life everywhere. There must be aliens all over the goddamn place. That's effectively the Drake equation. Now, the problem is that how come you're not getting any kind of radio signals? You're not getting anything from this supposed life that's out there. That's the Fermi paradox. Now, I subscribe, as that's the way I describe it, is I subscribe to the Fermi paradox, is that you have a real problem out there because we're not hearing anything from these people. Now, you've had some, kind of kitschy answers to that. Like Edward Snowden said that, well, maybe it's because their communications are encrypted. Yeah, that's cute. But, unless they knew to encrypt things right from the beginning, which maybe, just maybe, but it's a little hard to believe, when you look at, yes, they could be smarter than the average human is, because when you look at humans, most humans don't understand the importance for encrypting your communications, right? So for an alien civilization to realize the need to do that from the onset of something similar to radio is, that's very suspect. Like, that's very hard to believe that that's so. So anyway, there's little answers like that. And now kind of the new one is that, well, we're early to the game. Like, we're the first species that can even dream of sending, some memoir of itself, or, some evidence of itself into the stars. And that's a fair answer. Like, I get it. Okay. I don't agree with it. I don't think that's true, but I don't think it's true for a few different reasons. One of which is what Avi Loeb was talking about in this article, referencing the Big Bang. First off, I think the Big Bang is very sketchy science. Okay, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. There was no creation. In fact, I'd argue there are also theories out there that the universe actually has no beginning. Okay, so when if you subscribe to that kind of idea, that there was no beginning, or if you get into what you call the quasi-steady state theory, which was very, very popular up until just a few decades ago. This is a very popular explanation of how the universe came into being. Okay. Is the idea that there has been not just a Big Bang, but several mini bangs, hundreds of them. Okay. Because you have the issue of why is there if the universe started. So, this is a major, major issue in science, and we're going to get back into the aliens. Don't worry. Okay. But here's the problem is that if you have the Big Bang, you have a singular point from which all matter and energy as we know dispersed from. Okay. The universe should not have a uniform temperature. If that is true, what's further out, what's further out should be colder. What's closer in should perhaps be hotter. Right. But you have a problem is that by all of our research, humans, scientists in general, the universe has a very uniform temperature. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense that there is a singular point of origin. All right. And this is a huge problem in physics that there's no really great answer for. Okay. Now the quasi-steady state theory does a fair job of bringing that to fore, saying, well, it's because there's a bunch of bangs coming from all over the place that's why you have this, the steady temperature. It still doesn't fit exactly because all those bangs perhaps would have had to happen at the same time, right? That becomes problematic in and of itself. So the idea perhaps, and, modern science isn't the first one to have this, more antiquated science like the atomists of ancient Greece and some others also felt this way, that there actually was no beginning to the universe at all. It's funny, again, I'm an atheist, but when you look at the Bible, it becomes a very interesting conversation because, and longtime listeners to Sovereign Tech have heard a lot of this before. And if you're a longtime listener, I apologize for recovering the ground, but it's important to lay down the foundation of what I'm talking about here. there is it should not, with the Bible, okay, with Torah, whatever version you happen to run with, okay, if you're a Christian, your Old Testament, whatever. Okay, when it says, in Genesis 1:1, or, what I was brought up with, in Judaism, Bereshit, okay, and it's not, I know, believe me, we used to crack jokes about it too. It just means Genesis, okay, but my brother used to always say, it's like, oh, yeah, let's open up to Bereshit 1:1. Anyway, but, when you read Genesis 1:1 and it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? Now, that is, by most scientists, understanding or claim to how the universe started, that is how it started. There was a beginning. That is not a small feat of logic. If you subscribe to the idea that the universe had a beginning, there is credit need be given to whether it's the Babylonians or the Israelites or whoever actually wrote laid down the information that exists within the book of Genesis. That 50-50 guess is huge. But there's plenty of people who think that there was no beginning to the universe. There's throughout history, as well as there's a lot of science being researched on that matter right now. Okay, so anyway, I'm getting way off on that, but my point in bringing that up is that if it is true that there was not a Big Bang, if the Big Bang comes into question, then this idea that the reason we're not hearing from alien life is because it just hasn't developed yet becomes bullshit. Like, that just doesn't hold up. Okay, so there's, it's not just a simple answer here. I know people ask me to talk about this, and send me this article. It's not so simple as just like, well, why aren't there aliens, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of theories that have to come into play to really get down to an explanation. So, but I think I have the foundation down here quite a bit. Now, of course, why don't I think aliens have ever physically visited? And if they did, we should certainly, you would think there'd be some kind of remains. Now, some people will say that's what all the ancient astronaut theories about. That's what that show on History Channel called Ancient Aliens is all about. They did leave evidence. It's in the rocks, and all this crap. Nonsense. Not nonsense that there are genuine mysteries to history, and we cover them often on Sovereign Tech. I have a lot of fun doing it because it's a passion of mine. But that doesn't, just because there are these oddities in the historical record that we have in all of its various forms, written in stone, literally, and otherwise, doesn't mean thus aliens. That's like saying, oh, your science has been debunked, thus God. No, you don't just run to that. Okay. But as our understanding of physics goes, and, some people make the argument, well, we just figured out how to fly. Well, okay. So this is the argument for that, right? Because I would say to you, if you said to me, why don't you think aliens have come to Earth in, either in the past or recent past or whatever, or even now, I would say to you, because there is, we don't really have evidence, nothing serious that there is alien life, or, sapient alien life, as in sapient as in knowledgeable creatures. Okay. That exists within our own solar system, and the amount of time it takes to travel from another solar system, from like Alpha Centauri, Proxima, whatever. Okay. You're looking at a long, long time for that to happen. So by the laws of physics, you cannot go faster than light. And if you have that hard speed limit, it's very debatable. In my opinion, it's very questionable that aliens from some other galaxy or from some other, solar system, some other planet would ever come around here. Like, it'd kind of be such a shot in the dark. And it is a shot in the dark because, this is another thing that's so problematic. You get so many scientists that talk about how, oh, we found this inhabitable planet. We found this exoplanet that, that looks habitable. That looks good. When a year later, after the big news announcement and hurrah, hurrah, we found 2 more planets, you find out they were crap. Like they were incorrect, and a lot of times what they are telling you is somehow this habitable planet around this star so many light years away. Really, it's just because it's in the Goldilocks zone. They don't really know. But it makes for great headlines. It makes for great ad impressions, right? It gets you clicks on your site if you tell people about that. But there's a lot of real problems, with this whole, planet hunting, that a lot of scientists are involved in. So boy, where was I in all this? Right. So the laws of physics. Now, what some people will say to that, to my claim saying, look, you can't go faster than light. There's no way aliens are coming this far and getting here. Like, and I've even made the claim, humans need to get used to the fact that we can colonize, quote unquote, the solar system, but we're not getting any further. Have a great time in the solar system. There's a lot to have fun on. Grab yourself an asteroid, woo, rock and roll. But that's about as far as you're going to go. And I know that sounds very defeating, especially, and it sounds strange coming from somebody that's such a big Star Trek fan as I am. But anyway, people will say, well, don't you think that since you just discovered the laws of physics, 100 years ago, or that hard limit was, kind of theorized 100 years ago, isn't that a little soon to be telling people what they can and can't do as far as science goes? And I get that. I understand that point. The idea is that we just don't have that great a grasp of physics yet to know how we can, take advantage of how light redshifts and thus light itself kind of goes faster than light, or how we can, have this faster than light travel, how we could fold space and do all this wild stuff. I understand what you're saying, but understand this is that our grasp of the laws of physics is so great. That's why in the time frame from when we figured a lot of this shit out, we have been able to develop jet airplanes, shuttles, satellites, space stations, all kinds of shit, because we do have a good grasp of how all this works. Because these are, foundational laws of the universe. So I don't really agree with that assessment. It's like we've only known about it for so long. We still have much to learn. Yeah, we still have a lot to learn, but I don't necessarily think it's in those areas, okay, of the scientific process. So anyway, everybody probably thinks I sound like such an asshole right now. And look, the heat I get for this stuff all the time. I mean, it just, it wells up every time I begin talking about it. So anyway, let's move on a bit with this. One of the more interesting theories that comes out, and I'm going to talk about the Great Filter in a minute, but I want to bring up another theory that has been bantied about a bit recently, is that what's actually happened is not that, like Brian Cox is saying here, not that alien civilizations have died off because they couldn't make it past the Great Filter. But what's happened is that they've all done like the Krell from Forbidden Planet, where they all uploaded themselves into some computers or something, which is, what a lot of people are considering to be a very real possibility today. Kurzweil's dreams of transhumanism, the singularity, all of this. You got to be careful how you define the word singularity, but I'm just speaking very broadly. The idea of that all of these people are now living in virtual worlds, and that's why we see nothing of them. And as far as that theory goes, excrement. And I think that's why it's not getting shared a lot, because it's so easily, it doesn't make sense. The problem is that there is unless some freak accident happened that nobody could possibly guess. Okay. Not even the people that are like, oh, there's aliens everywhere. All right. Unless some freak accident happened to where somehow people go from stone knives and bearskins to virtual reality literally overnight. Like somehow they just, in one day, they discover how to upload all their brains to something. Unless they did that, there has to be remains, radiation remains, radio, literal radio remains, some kind of evidence. Okay. That is out there in the universe that was transmitted from their homeworld that we should have seen, or, something should be out there. To be seen. I mean, that's what SETI's been looking for. I mean, is it possible that SETI's just missed it this whole time? Sure, that's possible. Okay, but the evidence that is presented to you right now lends itself to say there's no life out there, or at least not much, or if it's out there, it's really fucking far away, really far away. And if it's really far away, as in multiple galaxies away and all this, guess what, folks? We're never going to see them. Even if you have, the great dream of warp drive and Star Trek and all this shit, you're not traveling to other galaxies. So, then it's practically moot. I mean, yes, it would be important to know if you knew right now that there was alien life in some other galaxy, in Andromeda or, the Spider Galaxy, whatever. Okay. Like, would that be exciting? Well, fuck, of course it would. Would that be game changing? Perhaps. But does it do anything to life on Earth? Well, other than the abstract idea that there's more, intelligent life besides humans, not really, because they can't get at you. They can't do anything about you. They can't really, they can't genuinely infect, your civilization, your culture. Ooh. So anyway, as far as now, I want to get more into, that was the theory that I said that's getting, brought around. Look, it just doesn't hold up. Like, if there are technology generally seems to go through stages. Even when you look at the chimpanzee, all right, there are stages to how they got to their tools, and you can see evidence of it. When you look at cave paintings, you can see, there's lots of different ways that things, it goes through stages, especially high tech. Like it pretty much has to, it would seem. Unless there's just something that is just so, for lack of a better word, alien, that somehow, there's a species that could just figure shit out instantaneously, and their radio waves and whatever other, whatever else came, whatever other transmissions came out, just, oh God, we just never saw them. They were entrapped. They were never even used. We went from A to X instantaneously. We didn't do B, C, D, E, F, G. So it doesn't make sense. Now, is it that, how about with Brian Cox's theory here, which isn't just his theory. Like I said, it has a whole name. It's called the Great Filter. That what's happened is that there have been alien civilizations. They've just died off. Once again, you still should see some kind of evidence of these civilizations that have died off. Unless, and I'm open to this, if you accept the theory, and you don't have to, if you accept the theory that the universe has kind of always been here, maybe then some of these, transmissions and all these different signals, that we should be picking up, just like we send out from the Earth. Casey Kasem's getting heard by Voyager, I assume. Well, no, not really. But it doesn't exactly work that way. But, maybe that all went past us already. And there was this great intergalactic empire that existed, I don't know, 1 billion or 2 billion years ago, and now there's no sign of it left. And it went well past, little old planet Earth, the little pale blue dot. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe, I guess that's possible. Really, yeah, it's just an answer where you can just say, yeah, that's possible, but you don't get much else as to where I think really that the evidence holds up that there just aren't that many fucking species out there. And and the idea that there aren't that many species also explains better. Yes, when SETI is looking for the various signals that they look for, to find evidence of alien, sapient alien life in the universe. Yeah, they are looking at a small portion of the universe. No question about that. Okay. But that kind of precludes that even in that small portion, it still fucks with the Drake equation, because there should be millions of alien sapient species out there. That's kind of the idea with the Drake equation. There should be tons of them, and they're not. And even in that small slice you're looking at, there should be something. So it really it still proves the idea, in my opinion, or the theory, that it proves the Fermi paradox. There just isn't that much life out there. It's very sparse, sporadic, and you're just not catching the signals yet. And you're going to have to map the whole goddamn thing, or at least half the thing, until maybe you could possibly find a detection of one other. I'm kind of reminded of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, the newer one. I love the original one. Please, Klaatu Barada Nikto, I'm on. All right. But, oh, Patricia. The new one with Keanu Reeves, which I actually loved. I thought that was a great fucking movie. But one of its points, yeah, I get it. It was pushing an environmentalist message. I know. Okay. But one of the things I really enjoyed about it is, Keanu Reeves is saying, look, there aren't many planets like this out there, like Earth. Okay. So we got to take care of the ones that exist. what life is out there, we got to make sure, it gets preserved, blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily agree, obviously, with that tactic or whatever, because it's goddamn tyrannical. Okay. But, the notion that there isn't that much life, I mean, obviously there aren't that many habitable worlds. That says something, that is an idea going around in Hollywood. Again, like I said, I know that movie was, kind of an insidious environmentalist, little propaganda piece. I really do understand that, but yeah, I don't think so. And, and it does raise the point. I mean, like I said, environmentalism is a religion. Ecology is a real thing. And I think it's important yes, it is absolutely important to get, to become a multi-planet species, go to Mars, hit up some asteroids. Like I said, go to Ceres or Eros or something, populate whatever planets, whatever planetoids, whatever planetary bodies, whatever celestial bodies that we can in the solar system. Because, we are on a fragile planet. Like fragile for human life. Right. And I don't think I worry that I think that this narrative that, oh, don't worry, there's tons of habitable planets out there. Right. I worry that narrative makes people careless, to where they're like, well, we can fuck up the earth and that's fine. I mean, again, the earth is going to, I love the old George Carlin shtick where he says, look, the earth doesn't care about you. The earth is going to go on no matter what you do. Even a nuclear war, the earth's going to be just fine. It's going to roll on. It'll heal itself, blah, 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 blah. I totally agree with that. And that all these environmentalist people, they really don't care about the environment in the abstract. They just don't want some bullshit in their backyard. Okay. And screw them for it. Certainly, like I said, environmentalism is a religion, but for human life, yeah, I mean, the conditions are relatively fragile. I'm not saying climate change. I'm not saying anything of the sort. All right. I'm just saying that this is the one place we've got, and it does need to be perhaps given a little more consideration just for your own ability to live on it. Okay. That's all I'm saying on that. It's not some environmentalist rant. So I worry, but but that's my point, is that I do worry that with people thinking, oh, there's life everywhere, everything will be fine, blah, blah, blah. Well, what if, the evidence, in my opinion, stands in stark contrast that no, there are not a bunch of planets out there that are habitable. And like I said, a lot of the ones that, NASA and whoever else, or the ESA is saying to you, oh yeah, we found another habitable planet. Look into those. Seriously, look into the registry. Go ahead, break out Google if you must, but use DuckDuckGo if you can. Okay. And look into them, and you'll find out that they will get taken off of the registry of potentially habitable planets because they find out after a little while that oh no, we were wrong. So, and I don't know. I don't understand the importance of why. Why is there this big push of a narrative? I mean, I guess it makes sexy headlines. It sells TV shows, maybe. I don't know. Why there's this big push to say, oh, there's life everywhere. There's life everywhere. When the science, in my opinion, stands, and not just in my opinion, I mean, if there's a scientific truth, it stands in stark contrast to that. It really does. The Drake equation forgets about all kinds of things. I mean, one thing the Drake equation forgets about is that, all right, let's say you have a planet, all right, that's in the Goldilocks zone, which we found those. The Goldilocks zone is just kind of this perfect distance away from us, the sun of a solar system that allows for, all the building blocks of life to thrive and go on. Okay. And develop and evolve perhaps into a sapient species, not unlike, humans. Let's say you find that. Okay, fine. So there's a planet in the Goldilocks zone. The conditions are right. Perhaps there's even water. There's everything. There's plant life might have even started. All these wonderful things began, on this far away planet, right? What the Drake equation doesn't really consider is, but what are the chances? What is the math for what it takes for for a sapient species to even begin to evolve? What brought humanity together? I mean, what were the mathematical chances that humans would even, crop up? So there's so much math, that is completely left out of, and I don't mean this is, this isn't meant to just be some kind of phrase or saying. It's literally kept out of the equation. of just what are the mathematical chances that sapient life would evolve, because I think those mathematical chances are through the fucking roof, and they would throw the whole Drake equation out the window. So yeah, I mean, that's really my whole take on on that. Yeah, like I said, it's possible that, again, accepting the idea, and this is the problem, okay? I don't think it's really possible based around the Big Bang so much, but if we're talking about the idea of the universe perhaps having always existed, okay, like kind of as it is, more or less, that it's always existed, then yes, I suppose it is possible that there have been alien species that have come and gone, and we will never see the evidence of that because that evidence has long surpassed the Earth, long past it in the galactic game of billiards, right? But you kind of have to accept that for the timeline to fit, for a lot of that to work out. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of cute answers. Oh, they're using encryption. Oh, and then there's that planet that some people theorize, or that there's that system that some people theorize has a Dyson sphere around it. We talked about that on Sovereign Tech a few months back. I mean, it's nice to think about, but the evidence says, pretty much says no. I mean, there's real mysteries out there, folks. There's real, like, galactic mysteries that, what are the answers to those? Was there aliens, blah, blah, blah. There's, the Lights On series, right? What were those? What's that hexagon on Saturn? I mean, there's all kinds of, even just in our own solar system, that are genuine mysteries that seem to point to something. Okay. But that's a wholly different conversation than what's getting brought up by Brian Cox and what gets brought up by a lot of people talking about UFOs. It's a very, very different conversation, and an interesting one, and one I'm willing to go down. But, if I ever do go down that conversation, you'd have to ask me first. But secondly, it would come with the massive caveat of that this is rampant speculation with little evidence. And as long as that would be understood, I would talk about it. But because I wouldn't want people taking me out of context saying, "Ooh, this guy's crazy. Woo!" I mean, I hear it enough. But I always make it clear, unlike other people, I make it clear when I'm speculating and when there's little evidence. And it's a rare thing to find in the podcast world. So anyway, I hope I answered the question on this article, and we talked about enough. I mean, I just went 42 minutes on, or well, about 30 minutes, I guess. And I hope that gets into that. I mean, there's the second part where, we could talk about all other kinds of wild things, but yeah, this idea of aliens, visiting the Earth and aliens being out there and all that. I mean, it makes for fun sci-fi, but the science, in my opinion, just does not hold up. And I don't use that phrase lightly. A lot of people just say, well, science says, they talk about it like it's God. Well, I hope I explained more where I'm coming from and some of the genuine facts and issues around a lot of this. And I didn't just say science. I fucking hate that when people do that shit. It's science, bitches. It's like, shut up. No, it's science when you can fucking explain it yourself. Otherwise, you're just being an ass, and you're no better than any, religious, crony out there that's saying it's God, bitches, effectively. Anyway, let me see. What other questions could I get to here quick? Well, I guess maybe just to put it in brief, are all of the alien civilizations dead? No, in my opinion, my theory, okay, and with plenty of research to back it up, they never existed. Most of them. There's a few maybe, but anyway, that's it. Okay. So why don't we get into, boy, I could almost stop it right there, but I feel like that'd almost be a little mean. So let's get another one. Here's a little tech question. This one's good. So I have another Patreon question here. What do you think of the push by governments to lure students into math, science, and tech fields? Oh boy. So this push, honestly, it comes. All right. Well, let me backpedal. There are people who would make the claim with some degree of evidence that, like, Silicon Valley is really an entire, think tank and development arm for the for the U.S. government. Like that is that really all this, all the sexiness, around, being in Silicon Valley, and developing, coding, all that good shit. That really, at the end of the day, you're all actually working for some kind of giant government program. And the example that they give for that is the Manhattan Project, where it is true that with the Manhattan Project, there wasn't just like one Manhattan Project. There was in the abstract, but it was a government edict controlled by a few people who were asking a bunch of different companies and universities and whatever else to, okay, you figure this part out, but none of them knew that they were all working on the same thing. Very few people knew that there was such a thing as a Manhattan Project, yet hundreds, if not thousands of people were working on it. That's the point. And so a lot of people say that Silicon Valley is really more of a modern day, at least now, it's more of a modern day Manhattan Project. For what? Who knows? Okay. I mean, and it's a very attractive theory. And this, I think the idea of what's with the lure to get people into coding, get them into math and science and tech and all this. I mean, it's interesting to think because there are programs. I mean, there's whole programs, government programs set up, and I don't mean software, government programs designed to get kids involved in this stuff. There are public school, extracurricular activities, all this different stuff to get kids involved, in being into this. And the idea that these kids are effectively going to, enter what appears to be private industry. Of course, what is private industry today, right? But what appears to be private industry, as in what appears to be not a government company or not, a government project or anything, but they will be effectively developing whatever the hell the government is really trying to, develop this ultimate weapon or ultimate technology of tyranny or something like this, right? I mean, that, I get it. Like I said, it's attractive. It's a possibility, I suppose. There are more simple answers, perhaps, like the idea that, and this is a very open thing, that governments, as well as, a lot of tech leaders, tech enthusiasts, tech entrepreneurs, whatever, that they recognize potentially that, automation, roboticization, is that a word? But automation is the best word for it. But automation and machine learning, AI, all these different technologies that are coming to, that are really coming together right now. Okay. And AI, you got to be careful when you say AI. I'm not necessarily talking about a general artificial intelligence, which is what you think about when you think of, commander data or something. All these different technologies are coming together to where they are going to put people out of jobs. The best example that people give is, the truck driving industry, that there's, the idea is there's really no good reason not to automate every tractor trailer in the United States. Even without, because they're set supply routes. So it's not as big a deal as if you have, if you're just a regular everyday person, regular everyday resident that wants a car to take them to the mall or something. Like there's very direct supply routes and you could build infrastructure around it to where trucks could be completely automated and you could still have human beings drive, behind the wheel of their own cars, not automating those. So that's a technology that appears to be very much coming, like I as much as I argue against self-driving cars, bottom line, as much as I argue against self-driving cars, self-driving trucks and tractor trailers and all this, like, I get it. There's an interesting case that can be made. And I do see the potential and possibility of doing that, of automating supply chains. There's a billion inherent dangers in that, but a lot of those dangers come from centralization as to where if you were automating supply chains in a more localized or by a regional area, it'd be a very different story, not so much of a problem, but that's another story. But my point being is that the idea is that millions of jobs will be lost just on the automation of, tractor trailers, of trucks. So, that's something that's coming. And so, what do you teach kids? Well, one of the things I've always said on this show is that the jobs that will pretty much always be needed are the repairmen. And you can say that robots will eventually learn to repair themselves. Yeah, I don't know that it's going to work out that way. Okay, because what you're going to have to deal with, as much as what I think today, Microsoft announced that its speech recognition is supposedly as good as the humans now. Okay, whatever. What you're going to have, if you have robotic repairmen fixing everything for a business, let's say, even if, all right, for example, if you're running a fast food restaurant, okay, they've already made robots that can make a sandwich, say at McDonald's, in like 7 seconds. Well, at Wendy's, I could make one in 6, but whatever. I'm not here to compete with the machines. Well, I kind of am, but anyway, all right. But you have a robot that can make a sandwich 7 seconds. Great. Okay. You don't need a sandwich maker at your restaurant, at your fast food place anymore. Awesome. All right. But when this machine goes bad, and it will, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to call the company that makes the machine, and they're going to send a repair person. Are they going to send a repair bot? Are they going to send some kind of is the bot going to have some kind of, robot going to have some kind of self-diagnostic? No, likely not. They're going to send somebody out. Now, the idea is that somebody, that repairman that they're going to send out, is eventually itself going to be a robot and not a person anymore. But here's where I think that there's an issue, and that's why I think there will always be technicians. Okay. There will always be human repairmen. And that might be kind of like the one job that exists in many ways outside of art and, even like a chef. I think there'll always be, chefs and all that, but maybe not the sandwich maker, like I'm saying in this case. Anyway, the reason that you're going to want a human repairman is because people are dumb. And since people are dumb, they cannot express it is completely inefficient. If the idea of automation and of roboticization, why am I having trouble with that word? Okay. If the idea behind, putting robots in positions and all that is to increase efficiency, be it on the bottom line on a spreadsheet or, just speed in general comparison to a human doing the job. All right. When you get to the point where something needs to be fixed, you have a huge issue here that I don't think any form of automation or any robot is really going to be able to solve. And that is the interface. And what I mean by the interface is that humans are dumb. The GM, let's say the general manager of, your local McDonald's or whatever, is an idiot. And generally they are. And I can say that I've worked in them. All right. They are just stupid beyond words. And that's the problem, is that they're not going to be able to interact very well with a kiosk. I really don't think the kiosk is going to be able to handle things. They are going to need to talk to a human being that can very quickly understand what's going on, that can read perhaps more than what words can say and can have experience in what's going on. Now, you could say, well, there could be a human on the other end of the robotic repairman that gets sent out, and that human, can interact, blah, blah, blah. But then that's not exactly the most efficient thing, is it? Because how often is this stuff going to break? And isn't it just cheaper to not have a bunch of people behind a desk, but to just send a guy out? I think you're going to find the numbers add up much more in that way. And that's a reality that, really in many ways, I hate to say this because the phrase gets used the same, it's just as bad as science, bitches, or it was God. But the market is going to have to bear some of this out if the market gets the opportunity outside of regulation. To where, what is the fastest thing to do? Is it faster to send out a human to interact with somebody? Or is it faster to, have like this one guy sitting at a desk and controlling a bunch of different robots, and then some kind of bullshit's going to happen, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think we'll find very quickly that it's far more cost effective to just send out a human being. This in the repair industry, in the technology repair industry, this gets shown for decades as being the way to go, because you can have a entire repair department, say, even at a smaller tech company. Okay. And I've worked at smaller tech companies and we've had repair departments, but usually if you really wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, you sent out a technician to the store to fix the problem. Okay. And 9 times out of 10, things would get assessed, and you'd be able to very quickly, decide what exactly, what course of action needs to be taken, or could the repair done, get done right where it is. Now you can say that everything will just be, so inexpensive that you'll just replace it. There won't even be repair guys, blah, blah, blah. That era while I understand kind of the, you know, like Jeremy Rifkin, like his work, the idea of zero marginal cost and all that, I know that that's kind of coming, and you see it with smartphones where, you know, you just trash your smartphone and you buy a new one. They're $50. Who gives a shit? I think on a lot of, shall we say, mission critical or customer critical stuff, it's just not going to be that way. Just like, I mean, salespeople is something else that I think is going to exist for, you know, for a very long time. And there's something to be said, and some company, like I can see this in the future, and maybe in some ways it's already happening in some industries where you would, you know, the entire interaction of, say, the sale of maybe a point of sale system, right? Of all ironies, you know, a register. Okay. That happens completely with some kind of automated system over the phone, and it never, you know, or on a website with a chat bot or something. And the, you know, say the owner of a store never even realizes that he wasn't dealing with a human sending him his brand new registers and all this. Well, first off, you're going to have an install team that has to come in to, to handle that. But second of all, there's something to be said for when, and I've been in this industry to see it happen. Like, there are some people who are such phenomenal salesmen. I mean, and I don't think a computer could replicate it, to replicate their magic, because there's a certain, you know, I mean, you know, maybe they're using NLP. I'm not saying I agree with that, you know, neuro-linguistic programming, you know, giving you a pat on the back, whatever they ended up having, you know, end up doing. Like, just, there's an art to that. And anywhere that there's like a real serious art that you cannot easily quantify and that you cannot always replicate because it's such a perfect mixture of perhaps the person's looks, their height, their strength, their tone of voice, all of this, that, you know, I don't think a machine's ever going to replace it. So, you know, that's another job that's always going to, you know, kind of be around. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off to the side, but my point being is that I think the real push for getting people involved in this is that the government unwittingly is being told by a lot of tech companies, which, so not so unwittingly, but a lot of tech companies are probably telling the government and telling schools and all this, because obviously Google and Apple are making deals with public schools all the time, and thus the government. They're telling them that, look, we're going to replace all of these jobs. You're going to have to start teaching kids this. I mean, and when, you know, if they step back, you know, for a minute, they'd say, wait a second. No. Some of this stuff you're just not going to replace. You know, it's great. You know, the robotic future in some ways is really cool because the robots can go do all the dangerous jobs, you know, so that human lives don't have to be on the line. But there's a lot of things where you absolutely want a human there. And if they step back and they thought about it, they're like, well, you wait a second. You're selling me this future. You're selling me this future because you're going to make a shit ton of money off of this future, not because it's the most efficient, the most practical, or, you know, what people really want. So there's a lot of false narratives that really kind of come together to create this idea that there's not going to be any more jobs, or that, you know, the robots are going to do everything. We're going to end up with some kind of Butlerian jihad out of Dune, right? You know, whatever. I mean, like there's so much left out of that conversation because a lot of these people, be it in government, be it tech entrepreneurs, whatever, don't know what it's like to actually get their fucking hands dirty. They don't know what it's like to live in, you know, Podunk, North Dakota, or you know, West Bumfuck, whatever. They have no idea what the real world is actually like. They live in a bubble, be it in DC or San Francisco. So, you know, the world is going to catch up to them. Time is going to catch up to them, and they're going to be like, oh shit, we were dead wrong about what our future is going to look like. So I really, that's the direction I more believe. I am open to, as far as like why kids are getting taught, you know, get involved in science, get involved in math, get involved in tech and all this. You know, I'm far more inclined to believe that it's just this idea that there aren't going to be any other jobs than these for, you know, and it's just a Band-Aid for like the next 20, 30, 40 years, you know, before the singularity happens and then the robots are fucking doing everything, right? I mean, I don't believe the robots are going to end up doing everything, but I'm saying by their perspective. That's not my perspective. I think it's more that than it's the idea that the government is making a gigantic Manhattan Project and they want to get the next generation involved. Though I'm sympathetic to people thinking that way, and there might be grains of truth. to that, to the idea that Silicon Valley is really just the new Manhattan Project, and what they're building, we don't know. I mean, and nobody will tell you. Like we talked about, what was the episode? It was a special I released last week or a couple weeks ago about the 10.4 event from Google. I mean, this is the thing with these tech companies. They keep telling you, oh, there's going to be this great future. There's going to be this future. We got this future here, in a couple months, we'll release this. In 20 years, we'll release this. In 10 years, it's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. But they never really tell you what it is. What exactly are you selling us? What are you bringing to us? I see what you're wanting me to do now, and it sucks. It's shit. Like Siri sucks ass. Google Assistant, well, that's crap. You go down the list, right? And I mean, I can't wait for this whole Pixel fever to just end over these new Pixel phones. People are like, oh, this is the greatest phone ever made, blah, blah, blah. Hey, that's going to go sour real fast. Note 7, hello. But they never tell you, like, what are you really trying to build? Like, what is the genuine product you're going for? Like with Microsoft, okay? While they don't exactly tell you, there's plenty of stuff out in the open to realize what it is that they're building. They're building, Azure. Like everything is just about getting everybody onto Azure and getting them hooked. Because why? Because Amazon with AWS, which is the only, which Azure is a competitor to, quote unquote competitor. Okay, with AWS, they're raking in billions a year. So, how do we get a piece of that, right? And so everything is about getting to Azure. Like I said, Cortana is just Azure with a pretty interface. That's it. All right. It's not even Windows. Like I said, Windows isn't even the operating system anymore. Office isn't, all this, none of that is what really matters. What matters is getting you hooked onto Azure and having all your data there and having everything run off of Azure, off this giant server farms and all this. That's the real push that Microsoft's going for. But then what's Apple's push? I don't know. Is it just to sell more iPhones? Like what is their end game? What is their future that they're trying to build? Is it that multi-peer connectivity framework that I've been talking about for years, to where they create their own internet that's peer-to-peer just between their Apple devices? Maybe, is it, what is Google? What's their ultimate plan? I don't fucking know. Nobody knows. And they keep telling you that they've got one, but they never tell you what it really is. They never really tell you what it is. Like when Sundar Pichai talked about that 10 years, what is at the end of that 10 years? They don't tell you. Amazon? Well, Amazon's looking to become a monopsony. Cut and dry. They're not telling you that. They're hoping nobody notices till it's too late. But of course, I've been talking about this for years. Amazon specifically. So, yeah, what exactly is getting built here? What is the end game? Nobody knows. And it's not what they're telling you. So that doesn't necessarily, maybe it's not something nefarious. I mean, I would say that the means being used do not justify the ends, the infringement on privacy and blah, blah, blah. But, well, anyway. All right. So I went way off. I went way into the stratosphere. We got to the great filter, baby, in this one. But that's enough. Those two questions, they took quite a while, but I think that was a good time. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're able to follow along. If you have more questions on anything I talked about, please do not hesitate. Use that Patreon messenger. Get in touch with me that way. You can email me as well. And there is Twitter, for as long as there's Twitter. Oh boy, that narrative's getting hot, where, people are saying nobody wants to buy Twitter, like Disney was going to buy it, but then Disney's like, holy shit, there's porn on there. We can't do this. And Twitter might not survive the year. Might. I think it will. I think someone's going to eventually swoop in and save it, effective, quote unquote. So I don't see Twitter going anywhere, but there's always the email, and there's always, you can get in touch with me through Patreon, which is something that I think has a very bright future, especially if it ever takes on cryptocurrencies. So enough of that. Thank you so much for being a Patreon subscriber. Thank you so much for donating. It means the world to me. It really, really helps out, the studio and my life, makes this possible in so many ways. It affords me the time, and I cannot thank you enough. And really, it's validating to me that you appreciate what I do and you appreciate talking about, really what I think are our next level subjects. And that's priceless to me, to know that people want to hear this. Great. Even if you think I'm insane, and I get lots of emails like that where people don't agree with me 100%. Fine. You don't have to. I never said that was a requirement. You don't have to agree with me 100%. But we've got to talk about this stuff because no one else is. Anyway, enough. Carpe Lucem, everybody. Oh man, that new Sex and Science Hour is coming out this Friday. And then woohoo, got a Sovereign Tech coming up on Saturday. You better believe it. And I might have some other Patreon stuff coming out this week. So I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.